Welcome to the Solving Equations and Inequalities with Rational Numbers notes. Today we're going to focus on just the adding and subtracting with equations and inequalities. And we're going to be looking about how do negative numbers affect this. So I'm Miss Gillum and let's get started. Okay, before we can actually start solving equations and inequalities with rational numbers, we have to remember the golden rule for solving any equation or inequality. And that is what we do to one side of an equation or inequality, we must do the other to keep it balanced, like a balance beam. And also remember that we are doing the inverse to solve. So let's just do a quick example. If I had x plus 8 equals 20, to do the same thing on both sides, remember we would subtract 8 to both sides to keep it balanced. And that would be x equals 12. So let's start by taking a look at a visual. So in this drawing, we have a box, which is our mystery. We are trying to determine what is in the box. We have 3 negatives, and they are saying that is equally balanced to having 6 positives. So we can think of this as x plus negative 3 must be equal to 6 because the balance is balanced. So we have to think, how do I get rid of negatives? Well, to get rid of negatives, we would need to add positives. So if I add one positive, that would cancel out that negative. If I add another positive, that would cancel out that negative. If I add another positive, that would cancel out that positive. But as I'm adding positives on, it becomes unbalanced, so I must do it to both sides. So I'm going to add 3 positives to this side. So I am left with a box is equal to having 9 positives. So mathematically, this would look like I am adding 3 because the opposite of a negative is a positive plus a positive 3 on this side. These are going to cancel because negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And you have x equals the positive 9. Let's take a look at our first example below. So remember, we've got to make our balance line. This is our balance line to keep things balanced on both sides. We're also need to remember we are trying to get x by itself. We want it to be alone. So we have a positive 20. To get rid of a positive 20, we're going to subtract 20 from this side. Then we're also going to subtract 20 from this side because we have to keep it balanced. These are going to cancel out. You're going to be left with x equals, and then we have to think of this as negative 15 minus 20. Which we can look at it this way, negative 15 minus 20. We could rewrite this as negative 15 plus a negative 20, which will give me a negative 35. And we can check our answer by plugging back in. So I have 20 plus a negative 35, which does equal negative 15. So I know the answer is correct. Okay, let's try this next problem. Let's draw our balance. And then the next thing I would do is always check when we're doing negatives that if there's a double negative, we can change it to a positive. So z minus a negative 5 is the same thing as doing z plus a positive 5. Keep, change, change. Okay, so now that we've done that, I have a positive 5, so I need to subtract 5 from both sides. This will make 5 minus 5 is 0, so I'm left with z. 13 minus 5 is 8. So then I can test this out. I have 8 minus a negative 5. And if we do 8 plus, now it's a positive 5, it does equal 13. So my answer is correct. Okay, this one has decimals, but no worries. We are great with decimals. So once again, let's draw that balance line. I have a negative 1 9/10. So to change that, to get rid of it, I'm going to have to add a positive 1 9/10. So if I do it to the right, I also have to do it to the left side. And then now these are going to cancel out because that makes 0. I am left with y on this side. Equals, and then we have a positive and a negative. So we have to remember our rules with positives and negatives that when they're different signs, we actually subtract them. So I went ahead and lined up my decimal. So this is going to become a 12 12 minus 9 is 3. 4 minus 1 is 3. And then the negative 5 and 2/10 has a greater absolute value. So my final answer would be a negative 3 and 3/10. So then we can go and plug in, make sure it makes sense. So I'm going to add these two negatives to make sure I get my answer. This becomes 12. There's the 5, and it would be negative. So negative 3 and 3/10 does equal y. Okay, once again, even though these are not equations, you still draw your line on the symbol. So we have x minus 18 is greater than or equal to negative 63. So I have a minus 18, so I'm going to add 18 to both sides. These are going to cancel out because that makes 0, and I'll be left with x. And then I have negative 63 plus 18, so I'm actually going to subtract them. Notice I brought my sign down. So I'm going to have to borrow from here. So 13 minus 8 is going to give me 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. And since the negative 63 has a greater amount of negative, it's going to be a negative 45. Don't forget, when we have inequalities, we need to graph them. So I'm going to put negative 45, then negative 44 on this side, negative 46 over here. This is going to be a closed circle because it has the equal to on it. And then it says that the x is greater, so I'm going to go to greater numbers. Okay, once again, we're going to put our balance line. We have a plus a negative 15, so to get rid of negative 15, we're going to add a positive 15. We're also going to add it to this side because we have to keep it balanced. So a negative 15 plus a positive 15 makes that 0. They cancel out. You are left with x. And then 25 plus 15 will give me 40. And then I drop my sign down. Okay, then let's graph this. So I'm going to put 40 in the middle, 41, and then 39 on this side. This one's going to be an open circle because it's not equal to. Now, some of us get distracted and says, oh, 40 is greater than x, and you think to go to the greater side. But no, you need to flip it around. This says x is less than 40. So I need to go to the lower numbers on this one. We are on our last question together. So first thing I notice is they're both fractions, so I'm going to go ahead and make a common denominator. So we have 1/4 and 3/8, which we know 8 would be a better common denominator, so I'm going to times this by 2 and also times the top by 2. So an equivalent form of 1/4 is 2/8. So I'm just rewriting the problem. So now I draw my balance. So I have a positive 2/8, so I'm going to subtract 2/8 and subtract 2/8. So these are going to cancel out, and I'll be left with w is less than or equal to. So we have to think over here. We have negative 3/8 minus 2/8. So we could rewrite that as negative 3/8 plus a negative 2/8. And that makes it a lot easier to see the answer. So my answer would be negative 5/8. So you cannot forget our subtracting rules even though we're solving equations. So now if I actually graph this, so we could say we have negative 5/8 here. So this would be negative 4/8. On this side you'd have negative 6/8, 7/8. Okay, this will be a closed circle because it says equal to, and it's also going to the left side. Well, you have made it to the end. Try these last two problems on your own. If you have any questions, we will go over them tomorrow. We are going to start class by talking about these two videos. So other than that, you are done and done for tonight. Have a good night.